Although I'm a huge 3D shooter fan and have been since I played the original Doom, I'll be honest, I was never a huge fan of Quake. Maybe it was because I tried it after Duke Nukem 3D and found Quake's world barren compared to Duke's interactive, real-world looking levels. Or it could have been because I just didn't fully appreciate the distinction between true 3D and 2.5D graphics back then. When the 2021 Night Dive re-release came out, I found myself revisiting it and being addicted to its speed and simplicity, which are things missing from a lot of current shooters, and something my teenage self didn't fully appreciate back then. Quake strips everything down to the essentials, even removing the action button. But given its focus on minimalism, one thing I find interesting about Quake is that it used a map that let the player select the episode and difficulty rather than just allowing you to choose these through a menu like in Doom. As far as I know, it was the first and only id game that used such a primitive game hub until Doom Eternal. Of course, level selection hubs were already used in other types of games, especially RPGs, which had things like towns for this purpose, but they weren't commonly used for 3D shooters. For this reason, I thought it'd be interesting to take a deeper dive into the start map to understand what it is, what it tries to do, and why I ultimately think it was a missed opportunity and could have been replaced by something much simpler like a cutscene. The player starts in a corridor facing 3 hallways. Each hallway terminates in a teleporter, or what Quake calls a slip gate. Each hallway from left to right represents an increasing difficulty level, with the leftmost one being easy and the rightmost one being hard. There's also a 4th difficulty level that's hidden. The easy hallway is decorated by a stained glass window representing that it's easy. The normal difficulty level has more menacing looking murals on the wall. Finally, the hard difficulty level requires the player to jump over a pool of lava while surrounded by crucified zombies. Once the player selects a difficulty level, they enter a second corridor facing 4 different entrances. These entrances represent the different episodes. If you want to return to difficulty selection, you can simply turn backwards and go back to the portal. The leftmost entrance represents the first episode, which is also made obvious by the arrow icons. The Nightmare difficulty level is accessed through the entrance in episode 4. After the player drops through the pool of water, they can land on a beam, which allows them to access a corridor on the side. This corridor then lets them enter the slip gate that selects the Nightmare difficulty level. Additionally, there's a button that can be activated by shooting at it, which allows the player to activate a secret within one of the episode 4 levels. After the player completes each episode, they return to the start map, at which point the entrance to that episode is blocked off. Once all episodes are completed, a pit opens in the center of the episode selection corridor, allowing the player to enter the final slip gate to fight the final boss. So why does the start map exist? One reason was almost certainly as a showcase for Quake's technology, especially its true 3D graphics and advanced lighting and rendering. This can be shown by the interaction of the torches and lava against the dark rooms. The other reason was to serve as a sort of glue to tie together Quake's very disjointed episodes. As reported by Shack News in their coverage of Quake for its 25th anniversary, each of the 4 episodes had a completely different theme and were designed by different designers. John Romero decided to link them together using the first-person shooter as a narrative device by having the player start in a military base. Hence, he created the start map. He then had Adrian Carmack produce some new textures, but not too many, according to the interview. A consequence of this is that the start map doesn't look very unique compared to other maps in Quake, even though it probably should since it's a military base and not any of the other worlds that the player is traveling to. These reasons for needing the start map sound good in theory, but there's various problems with the start map on closer inspection. The first is related to pacing. The start map seems to want to encourage exploration of what's made possible by the engine, which is a slow exploration. But Quake isn't about that, it's about speed. At the same time, the start map is also not a tutorial level per se. For example, it doesn't have any buttons, so the player is still presented with messages when they encounter the first button in episode 1. The second problem is its relation to the story, if you want to call it that. According to Romero and the game manual, The start map represents the military base that Quake guy is leaving to fight Quake's minions. However, it doesn't feel like a military base at all. We can compare different sections of the game manual story and see how it's very inconsistent with the start map. First, the manual describes where you're at as a secret installation, which implies there are military personnel and scientists around. In Doom, levels were very clearly representative of a space military facility, and there are corpses and equipment everywhere throughout the base. Quake's start map is barren of any supplies, and the only NPCs are some zombies crucified to the wall, which may be the staff. Next, it describes the place as being overrun. However, there's no activity in the start map at all, and no enemies. In the manual, it also says the commander tells you you have full authority to requisition anything you need, but there aren't any supplies in the base, so you, apparently the last hope, are supposed to run into battle with nothing but a shotgun and an axe, even though you're supposedly inside a secret military base? Finally, it says the heart of the installation holds a slipgate that's keyed to Quake's dimension. This suggests there's only one slipgate in the facility, but of course the start map has many slipgates, including slipgates that go back to different areas of the start map, such as the level selection and the difficulty selection corridors. There's no need to keep belaboring the inconsistencies with the story, but of course you get my point. Obviously the manual was not written with the start map in mind. Now let's come back to my original question of how they could have improved the start map given the time and technology limitations of the day. The most obvious way would have been to make the start map actually representative of a secret military base being overrun. But I don't think this would have been possible at the time given the crunch and also given what other games were able to do at the time. Half-Life showed how this could be done right, but that was released 2 years after Quake. The simplest solution in my mind would have been similar to what they did with Quake 2, which involves some basic cutscenes. This would show the Quake guy traveling between different dimensions. Many games during and before this time already used cutscenes, such as Warcraft 2, so it wouldn't have been something very novel to have to build. So coming back to what the start map is, I think the start map in Quake is an oddity. In a lot of ways, it's a very fitting oddity. It's very Quake-like in that it represents a jumble of thematic ideas that is Quake. Quake is very clear about how the player should play the game, meaning it's a fast action shooter, but it's really unclear about the story or narrative cohesion, and that's where id regressed with Quake over Doom and Wolfenstein 3D.